So we will call the Civic March here, but it's actually the April meeting. Planning Commission order is 7:01 on April 1st, and the entire Planning Commission is here. There are 4 people in attendance from the Borough Council and our staff, and 3 or 4 people online. So tonight I'd like to begin with a shares update. I have 2 items to update folks on. First item is a bittersweet item, which is linked to Lionsgate Dave Bowers' last meeting. And it's, Dave, you've been at it for a long time. And, but it is still sad to see you go. All of my tenure in the Planning Commission, you failed the Planning Commission. And so, I learned a lot from you about craft of being a planning commissioner, but also just about this town and its history and things that make it a place that we all love. I think that one of the things I've always enjoyed about working with you is your attention to detail and your facility with numbers and your attention to things like slopes, sun and so forth, and your interest in making all those things. But what I will most remember about Jim and I were exchanging a memory about this was when we were working on the Methodist Church, and we went on a couple of pilgrimages over there with that branch and through, and it became clear that she wasn't quite sure what to do about the stained glass windows. And the architects, I think, were predisposed to just get rid of them and start over. Jim tells me it's he who sort of persuaded them not to do that. But I distinctly remember that it's you who showed Matt how to do that by connecting them with a person who could refurbish, restore, reinvigorate that glass, and put it back in. So every time I walk down Essex Avenue, I think about that. I look at those windows, and I think about that. And I think how persistent attention to every little detail about how this town works is really critical. You can't let up. You can't settle for good being the end of the curve. Sometimes you have to get those details. And so that little thing I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for the fact that you've always been able to do that. As is my custom, I picked that up for you. And so I offer it to you. I hope it brings you joyful reading.
Appropriate wrapping.
Yeah, you'll be the first one to tear that out.
Can I criticize the wrap?
That's right. Does anyone else have any words they'd like to offer?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any words they'd like to offer?
Well, Dave has been on the Planning Commission slightly longer even than I am antediluvian. So he is the reason that I joined the Planning Commission many, many years ago. And I don't know whether to thank you for that. But I've been here for 18 years, and I think you've been here for 20.
20 in June.
So
Yeah.
let's raise a glass
Hot tea.
to Dave's long service. I mean,
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd just like to thank you for your service. So it's been
We disagree on
occasion, but that's good. That's healthy.
That is healthy.
I think that my greatest memory is when you supported the revising the code, the zoning code, because that was a big push. And you were right on board with that. You and Jim both, but I do remember you constantly advocating.
When you told me about form-based zoning, which I had never heard of, and you mentioned it.
That is good effort.
Yes, it was.
Appreciate that. And I appreciate your effort behind trying to save the house that was at the corner of
Oh,
Harvard.
Snyder House,
Snyder House.
yeah.
That happened, I think that was 21 right before we moved.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
lament that, and I can only imagine how you must have felt.
I still lament it. Well, thank you, it's been a real trip. Think about when we started with the old code, and coming to the realization that it couldn't do what we needed it to do in the whole process.
Wow.
First, spending 2 years trying to figure out how we can adapt it, and then coming to the conclusion that
Yeah.
we had to start from scratch. And then the support that we had to start from scratch.
And being the first, I think, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
was really
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate this.
And I should say, I forgot to say that the two signature ordinances which shape the physical form of our community, ordinance and historic preservation ordinance are resolved. First, your installation and persistence over 20 years. But also, like I said, that we held it. I think you did do like a house survey or something.
Yes, I did.
Yes. So, I mean.
It's amazing in a small town, how many houses are
At least 1,000. So, that is an effort above and beyond. As we walk around our town, we can do that.
Okay.
So,
That's very fun.
the other item on my update is a happy item, which is to introduce Rob Hirschwell, who is here tonight. We're the Great Commission is starting next month with the places occupies that, as you can see, very lofty steep. But thank you for coming, and would like to ask if you care to introduce yourself.
Yeah, Ralph Hirschwella. I've been a resident of Narberth for 27 years, in that range. First living on corner of Conway and Stewart, small house, that's the way a lot of people start in Narberth, and realizing I didn't ever want to leave this borough, moved to Wayne Avenue. I'm at 220 Wayne Avenue. I'm an architect. I've been working for 31 years now for Jacobs Engineering. It's a multinational company. My specialty in architecture is pharmaceutical design, and I'm a subject matter expert in that. But that's sort of beside the point. Architects are architects, and we care about details and about good built environments and how to achieve that. And I've always been very observant of what's happening in the borough, and I'm glad to now take part in it in this way and do whatever I can to help the borough. So, thank you for having me.
Yeah, there was a complaint online about the sound quality.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're having trouble hearing, so I don't know if you can make any adjustments at this point or not.
I don't know. But thank you for finding that. Is that something that we can address?
I can mute and unmute it. It says original sound for musicians is on. So that's all the controls that I
Can you
have.
shout?
Yeah, just have to speak up clearly.
Yeah, I would say, well, you can try speaking up and,
See if someone responds.
they didn't say it was zero sound, they just said it was difficult to make out, so hopefully, people can make an effort, or turn up the volume on top of. We apologize for any technical difficulty.
Is this the initial run of the new owl? No, it's a spinning. Wait a minute.
It's like it just keeps.
Take a look at Netflix.
It's not.
Not connecting.
It's ready to connect, but then. Oh wait, no, this one's.
Okay, go ahead.
So a few things, county is running our steering committee lunch and learn a week from, Thursday, for the active transportation plan. We're finally wrapping up the memos, for the data associated with it. Just to clear, we're just cleaning up some of the data we got back from Esri. We'll distribute that to the planning commission and to our staff when, it is complete, and it'll be most likely in there this week when you'll see it, and then the steering committee will also get a chance to review it. Additionally, the county will be at Narberth Day, on May the 4th. We'll be having Montco 2050, in addition to the Crosstown Green, the Greenway from Lower Marion and Narberth, and the active transportation plan and public engagement as well. So.
That I assume goes to the rest of that.
Yes. So it'll be released to the planning commission and staff simultaneously. So, but yeah, we're just cleaning up the data we got back from. Because when you have, we had nearly 1,900 responses, most of which did write text, so we had to go line by line, every area of the responses and everything, so we were able to identify places in addition to what they put on the map. But it'll be interesting to see, because there's a lot of patterns that show up. So that's all we can.
So we'll see that. Let's go in there.
I can't make the monitors work. I'm sorry. I mean, you can see.
Do you think it sounds any better now? And also, I've joined, so maybe you could let me.
Hey,
Okay.
I'll just weigh in the sound. If you're closer to the owl, we can hear you fine. If you're further from the owl, you're quiet.
That's where the owl always is.
What if you push it like 2 feet towards the top?
It's the power strip.
Just push it far from one way.
If we lose the electric or
It's mostly Todd that we can't hear.
Oh, you saw those great things I said about Dave?
Haven't you ever heard of something called selective hearing?
We'll put the thing in the sanctuary of the audience, so the speakers, so it needs to go another 3 feet towards top.
I know, but it's, see, the wires are
He was having a
everywhere.
hard time with the wire.
I just don't want to, I don't want to like damage the connection to the meeting by having some cable go loose.
Well, you could move Todd.
We'll have to use our outdoor voices. Is that better? Is that Ira?
Yeah, that's better.
I think the sound is coming in through Adam's computer and not the owl.
Now. Can you hear us now?
Yes, that's much better.
Oh, you can hear you better too.
We can hear you through the owl, not the computer.
The challenge is every time we have a meeting, something just doesn't the same. It's just like, this technology is.
It's changing quickly, right? Every meeting. All right. Next item of agenda on the agenda is to approve the March 4th, 2024 minutes, and also to approve a revision to the February minutes. Since those were just distributed today, I will suggest that we table that. There's a lot of minutes to write, so.
It's 134 pages of transcription.
Oh
my goodness.
A no judgment zone here, but we will we will table that.
Whatever it is, you don't get paid enough.
No, well, it should double it.
Double it, yeah.
Double it every day.
By having short meetings.
Okay, so, and then the last thing that I'd like to ask is, we have in our agenda tonight, future planning, recommended priorities, 24, 25. I would like to ask, if we could table that as well to our May meeting, when we'll have more time to discuss it and be better prepared to discuss it. Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
And so I'll just add, the council has a retreat later on this month where we'll be discussing sort of priorities for the borough in general. So we will include, planning commission as part of that discussion. So we'll be working with your timeline.
Okay, well, we do have, from past meetings, I believe we have 7 topics that we identified, but we didn't prioritize them. And the other part of it is that this is also useful for shaping the work plan of Montgomery County Planning Commission. There's some tasks that they might be really good at working on, and others that might be better to be handled in other ways. And so that's the kind of dual consideration, like what are the borough council's priorities with these things? And then where would borough council like to see that, the resources that have been allocated to MCPC through the planning contract to be allocated, which are like a Venn diagram that might overlap in the middle, but might be slightly different. So that's
I think we'll be prepared to give you council's perspective by the end of the month, by the end of this month.
Okay. Okay, so then the only other item on the agenda is land development and subdivision 230 Haverford, where Planning Commission has requested a staff update. And so I see Matt, you're here, I see Eric's online. Is there anyone, Matt, on the staff that you'd like to ask to just update us on the progress of completing the application?
Thanks, Todd. I would defer to the borough engineer, Eric Johnson, at this time. And he's prepared to give a brief update.
All right, Eric, you're live.
All right, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know that there is a whole lot new to update you on. As you know, the applicant was before you last month. Presentation, you guys gave a recommendation. Since then, the applicant presented to council at the last meeting, provided some of their proposals to deal with the review comments and solicited feedback from council. There has not actually been any other new submission made to the borough for review. My understanding is the applicant continues to work on their plans with regard to vehicle turning and various movements, but there's nothing new that I nor Kevin have reviewed that has not already been seen during a public meeting. So that's it.
Okay, so Eric, would the revised turning movements, would that also then go to the fire chief to review?
Correct. Yes, I've had the discussions with the applicant through my review letter. The fire marshal has had his review letter, and I believe there's been some correspondence between the applicant and the fire marshal regarding apparatus size and working through, to reach a satisfaction, a mutual satisfaction for access to the building.
Okay, and so I guess is it safe to infer from what you said that they've not yet completed the stormwater management calculations?
They still need to resubmit to address the review comments, but I have not seen a resubmission yet.
Okay, and once the resubmission is received, either you or maybe Matt, can you tell us what happens at that point?
Any new resubmission that would come in, I would review it and issue an appropriate letter, for the borough's consideration.
Okay. Is there anyone here? Are you confident this can happen in 18 days? Matt, Eric, the receiving of the new submission, the review letter, addressing of final comments. Council vote is April 18th. Are we confident that this can be completed? I think that's a resounding no.
It's not really our job to say whether it can be completed.
You scheduled a vote on April 18th, correct? My question is, are you confident that the kind of material in hand that we need to conduct that vote on April 18th?
You know, if we don't have a sufficient completed submission,
Then council will not be in a position to entertain taking a motion.
yeah, I mean, we are assuming we will have this by the 18th. If we don't, we will not be in a position to vote. I mean, that's how this process works, as you are well aware.
Does anyone else have any questions about the status of the application? You?
Let's keep going.
One other question, I don't know if this is for Matt or Eric. You know, it came to our attention at the council meeting that the architectural renderings that were provided were inaccurate. Are you expecting those to be part of the final submission as well? Accurate architectural renderings?
That would be good.
Okay, I would agree. That would be good. Okay. Eric, thank you very much for providing that report. Normally at this time, the commission might discuss what's been presented. The commission had requested an opportunity to hear an update and to issue, if it felt necessary, any further recommendations or suggestions to council about that matter. We did that because our letter of approval was actually conditioned on many things being met. And so it was our interest to examine whether those things were being met and to, if they weren't being met, to issue further recommendations to council. Unfortunately, we were informed Sunday night by the Borough Council President that we were not to have any deliberation or take any votes or issue any further recommendations on this topic. I have the whole email chain here. I was intending to read it to the public so they know that we've been told not to discuss this matter at our meeting. Hesitate to use this language very well. I consider this to be a gag order. The Borough Council is not even asking us not to make a recommendation. It simply said we cannot discuss this in a public meeting. After consultation with the Borough Solicitor, I'm ready to clarify item 2A on the agenda for tomorrow's Planning Commission meeting. Since Planning Commission has voted and issues its recommendation letter for the 230 Haverford application, Borough Council has accepted the letter and acted on it by setting a date for the vote. Further deliberation on this topic at the meeting is not appropriate. Deliberation is not appropriate. Item 2A on the agenda will be an information item, not an action item. Action is inappropriate. Borough staff will be available to discuss the current status of the project application. However, given the extremely short notice for the applicant, there will be no expectation for the applicant's team to be present at the meeting. The meeting was noticed per legal requirements in the time frame that was necessary for meetings to be noticed. I would hope that the applicant, knowing that their project was going to be discussed tonight, would have an interest in being here to answer questions about their progress on their application, but apparently they're not. I don't feel like it's important to read this whole correspondence, except I will read our request so that you know what the request was that I made to council. Fred, thank you for your note regarding the agenda of our meeting on Monday. As you know, the Planning Commission's recommendation to council was conditioned pursuant to a number of issues being addressed by staff, applicant, and council, and review of information that was not yet in hand, such as the conditions agreed to at the conditional use hearing. As such, it is perfectly reasonable for the Planning Commission to have the application on its agenda in order to receive information about the issues that it stated were unresolved. This is also an important matter with continued public transparency. So we do appreciate your making the staff available to update us on the status of the application. In addition, it came to light at the council meeting that certain information was not disclosed by the applicant to the Planning Commission. For example, the applicant's architect said the renderings of the building's design, which are integral to both MPC's recommendation as well as the conditions agreed to by council, did not accurately represent the design of the building. In addition, the applicant approached council about additional waivers from the Saldo that the applicant did not make us aware of. Finally, it is not clear in the conditions agreed to by council, which were published a few days ago, that the Planning Commission's recommendation about third-party monitoring of the construction be established was followed. I doubt the Planning Commission would stand behind its earlier recommendation if this is not. In light of this, it is reasonable if the Planning Commission members would want to discuss these matters, and if members feel it is warranted, offer additional recommendations to council in the advisory role that we play. I can pledge to you that you will have further recommendations by your April 4th workshop meeting, which gives council plenty of time to consider them before its April 18th business meeting. I did begin conferring with the borough manager about our agenda last Thursday, but was not able to resolve the discussion with him before he left for the day. I called Friday morning to discuss with him, but he was off for the day. As we're obligated to publish our agenda 24 hours before a meeting, I had to submit the agenda Friday without the benefit of talking to him. I trust this will allay any of your concerns about our agenda and council's scheduled vote, and I'm confident council will benefit from the opportunity to consider any further recommendations we might provide. That was a request that I sent to the borough council. Now, but as I said when I walked in, we appreciate hearing your response, and whoever else is listening, we appreciate hearing your response as to why a council, or why you have concluded that we should not discuss nor issue any further recommendations on this matter.
So first off, I do want to thank the Planning Commission for its deep and prolonged attention to this project. It's a big project, and it's going to change the downtown significantly. And it really is fitting that it gets sort of thorough attention. That being said, there's a process in place that's in our borough code for dealing with a development. And the process as written does not allow for multiple votes on recommendations. The Planning Commission submits its votes on recommendations and submits a report to council that concludes Planning Commission's official role in the development process. You're welcome to discuss this internally. As you had an agenda item and you asked questions of borough staff, that is totally appropriate. But in terms of taking action as a committee, the role is specified in the borough code. So as soon as this agenda was sent out on Friday, I believe the borough manager had expressed to you his concern that this was not appropriate. You published the agenda on Friday. I immediately got a call from the borough solicitor telling me that there's no provision for a revote. So I passed this along to you on Friday that a clarification was needed that this was going to be an information item only because there's no provision for a revote. As for why the applicant's team is not here, so this agenda went out on Friday for a meeting on Monday, on Good Friday, it should have. There's rules for, again, in the borough code, for how we set the dates for a planning meeting. They are in coordination with the borough, with our engineer and with our other staff, and with you as chair of planning commission. And part of that is to avoid a process where somebody is being summoned essentially to a meeting on very short notice. So the process wasn't followed. The applicant was being asked to come to a meeting on extremely short notice, and the solicitor told me that that was also inappropriate. So I communicated these to you, and it was over Easter week or weekend, so obviously it was difficult to coordinate a quick response, but last night I felt like I had to pass along the concerns of the solicitor. So I don't think you should feel stifled. I know that several of you have reached out to council members with your concerns, and I think I welcome that. You are totally free to reach out to anybody on council with your concerns based on what we've heard. But as a committee, as a taking official action, you have concluded your role for this project. Just like if the Parks and Recreation Board were to come and say, we'd like to make an official statement on this 230 Haverford project, we would tell them, no, there's no, you have no official role in this process. You can discuss, you can talk to us, but you can't instruct the applicant that they have to come to your committee, and you're not making an official statement as part of the process. So I think that's what's going on here. There was some confusion over what the process was. Since it was over Easter, we were all pretty busy. Many of us were pretty busy, I don't want to presume. My family was, I know Todd was. So and it's all there in the emails. I think I was pretty clear.
So, isn't council able to ask the planning commission for advice in general?
Yes, we are able to ask planning commission for advice, which we have not done in this case.
Okay, so that really begs the question. Knowing the code aside, knowing that we were interested in considering to review this and offer potentially for the suggestions, why are you not interested in our advice?
We are interested in your advice, Todd. We went through planning commission's list. It was included in our packet. Council members read the list, asked questions of the applicant based on planning commission's comments. The reason that you are concerned about the architectural rendering is because you had flagged a stair tower that didn't have any windows on the rendering. I asked the applicant about it. They said, well, it does have windows. They're just not in this picture. That's the reason that came out, directly from planning commission's comments and planning commission's concerns. So you can be assured that we are taking, planning commission's role seriously. And if we have more questions, we'll ask you for them. Many of us have been in your meetings, right? There's 5 of us right now watching this meeting. And at the other meetings where you address this project, there have typically been about that number, 5 or 6. I think one meeting, everybody was there. So we're listening, we're aware of your concerns. That's what I can say.
Does it bother you that we voted on an application that was an error? Particularly in regard to a matter that you have a written condition with the applicant, that the applicant has to conform to drawings. So we voted to recommend approval of an application based on drawings, which we then learned were inaccurate, and not because we just couldn't see them, because the architect said that it was a problem with the Revit program and it wasn't drawn properly. Therefore, we can't trust anything we saw in those drawings. We essentially voted for an application that was presented to us with erroneous information about an issue that we all care about.
As far as I know, the only concern was that there was a window missing in one picture. So
what else is missing? What else is wrong? Those drawings are meant to be drawings that we hold them accountable to when they build the building, and they're an error. And we voted a recommendation to support the project.
I would say that there's hundreds of pages in an application. There's always.
But this isn't just any page. There's a specific recommendation, or not recommendation, condition that you've agreed to with the applicant that they will build the building according to the designs that are approved. There's a bond that's being held against that. The drawings that we recommended approval of were in error. This system, Fred, this system works on truth and trust. The applicant has not been truthful. Fred, we have to be able to rely on the truthfulness and accuracy of information that's presented to us. I will tell you, and I will use words that I'm going to regret. This application is, it should not have been accepted as a complete application to begin with. Let's listen to your borough engineer. He can't say a word about it. They still can't get it done. Fred, how did you feel when you got a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission that was 12 pages long and had 6 pages of complaints about the application? Did that send you a signal? What was your reaction to that? Oh, good, they approved it?
Planning Commission voted 6-0 in approval of the application with 1 abstention. That's all I'm going to add.
And it was contingent on certain things being addressed.
So we're not going to.
And it doesn't really matter how you interpret the vote. There were 6 pages of critiques of the application that still needed to be addressed, whether we voted to approve it or not. How did you react to that when you saw that? Just tell me, like, as a borough.
I was in the room when you were talking about it.
And how did you react when you got the letter? Did you say, like, holy crap, I have a problem on my hands? Did you say, oh, good, they voted it, now we can move on? How did you feel? You're the Borough Council president. You got an application with the Planning Commission writing 6 pages of critique of it. Do you know why we voted yes? In respect of you, that we trusted you would move this along and that you would make sure that these things are being taken care of. You scheduled a vote and you can't even tell me whether you expect to have it ready, but you'll just.
I'm not the applicant, Todd. It's not.
You're the Borough Council president. That's who you are. Are you paying attention to this application?
I am not the applicant. I am not developing this project, Todd. It is not my responsibility.
How did you feel when you saw that letter with all those problems that were outlined?
As I've said, I was aware of your critiques because I was here. You're.
Fred, how did you feel about them? How did you feel about them? Did you feel like, holy crap, the borough's gonna be in trouble if this doesn't get fixed? Like we all feel? We are doing this tonight, Fred, because we are very concerned about this application. We're concerned, we heard you at your last meeting, rushing this to a vote when it has problems. And I don't get, and we don't get from that last meeting and from you tonight, any sense of concern that maybe you ought to hold this applicant's feet to the fire. That you're right, this is the applicant's application, but the applicant's not here. Why don't you stand up to this application and hold their feet to the fire and say, you guys are going to keep going to meetings until you get this done.
What makes you think, we're not going to vote on this project if it's not complete according to the
then why does it matter that you scheduled a vote in this email? You have plenty of time to hear more comments from us.
Todd, if I may, is that okay if I make a comment? So, I mean, I know you feel strongly about this, but I mean, you folks did have the opportunity not to vote for this at the last meeting. So, I mean, I think you should take some responsibility for having voted something that you don't fully support. You had that opportunity at that point.
Because we wanted to be supportive of council. We voted for it.
Todd, I was at that meeting, and I understand that you have a lot of concerns, but I'll note that you were the one non-vote in favor. It's not clear to me that you are speaking on behalf of the entire planning commission.
All right, let's let other planning commissioners speak.
I voted to approve it because I had come after many months to recognize that we were not going to move this applicant because we really didn't have, the planning commission really didn't have any power. Our only power is to recommend to the Borough Council, which does have ultimate power in this situation. So for us to continue to beat a dead horse And believe me, this applicant is a dead horse. Would serve no purpose. That's why I voted to approve it, to move it along to a venue in which the audience would have some power to affect the outcome. Now, that power is in your hands. We are hopeful that you will attend to the questions that we have raised over and over again in an unprecedented show of concern over an application. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I have never seen an application, small or large, that was this deficient, particularly one that is sliding into home plate when it never should be. That's what I voted. Now, the ball is in your guys' court. We will be very interested in how you handle it. We've done our best. And we're all tired of dealing with this applicant. And I hope that you are able to swiftly and decisively deal with them.
I agree with Jim. I voted for the exact same reason, that our feet were tied, our hands were tied. We are subject to the rulings of the zoning code and what the codes say, just like the codes say one thing, but our desires say something very different. And as you already stated, this is a really important project in the downtown, and we feel that it's not living up to its potential. And all we're asking council to do is look at our conditional, our conditions that we voted yes, but we had so many conditions that only council has the opportunity to request of the applicant to look at those. And they're design issues. They're design issues that we think are important. And we are recommending as a professional body certain conditions. And we are asking you to look at those carefully. And it's not only the Planning Commission, it's also the HARB. And Jim can speak to that because he's a member of the HARB. But they very specifically asked, and I was not present at the council meeting, but I listened to it carefully. And I did not hear the applicant agree to any of the conditions that either we or the HARB requested. Photographs of the buildings during demolition, not a word. That's a simple thing. We're not asking for them to redesign the project. We are basically mostly okay with the project. It's not a total redesign. It is some serious, adjustments. But it's not a total redesign. It's not going to take it. Frankly, I'm flummoxed. I don't understand why the applicant is refusing to listen to us. It is taking so long because they keep coming back with little tweaks that don't really seem to address our concerns.
And I did read to them the HARB's concern. They had the request for photographs, and once they understood it, they did agree to it.
Did they? Because it didn't sound like it did.
Yeah, they agreed to it. It may have been a little unclear. Maybe he nodded. Okay. It didn't come through the video, but the
HARB also is in a position to ensure that the project blends with the existing community. And therefore, they really should be allowed to have another look at it. They're requesting to continue to look at how it blends with the downtown. They're asking to tear down certified historic structures. Now, granted, there may not be structures that most people care that much about, but they've been there since 100 years ago, and they're whether or not there's materials in those structures that are valuable, who knows? But there may be, and they also are replacing them with new buildings that look nothing like the downtown and that will have a huge impact. And I think the HARB deserves to give them some more attention. And I didn't hear council saying these items that are listed by the Planning Commission, that are requested by the HARB, need to be followed. We need to see you, the applicant, return these drawings addressing these issues. All I heard was instead, we can't do that. Not from you, from the applicant. That's all I heard the applicant say. Oh, we can't do that. And they haven't. They've been dragging their feet. And it's very frustrating. And Todd is understandably frustrated because he has spent so much time writing letters and talking to us and, being on the case. And we're just asking you, please pay attention to what we're requesting. That it's, what looks like a beautiful eyewash drawing is missing a lot of information.
Any other planning commissioners like to respond?
No, I'll just reiterate, I thought Jim Connells described well why those of us who voted for it did so. I will say, in my swan song here, that I felt like we weren't beating a dead horse. We were not going to be able to get any more out of this. It's a particular frustration to me, since I have been involved in the writing of the new code and many discussions about the whole process of special conditions and all that we still haven't found a way to get real teeth into that really important aspect of the code. And I think this project is maybe the poster child for that. I think for me, the particular frustration in regards to this project is this applicant, as everybody knows, has two projects that are still under construction that were not built according to the submission that we were given. And I know while words were said and things were written that this project will be built according to the drawings, we of course don't really know what those drawings are. And that's a problem. And as another piece of historic context, because I was involved in this too, is that we had detailed discussions when we were coming up with a list of contributing structures for the historic district, that these two-story buildings be listed as contributing. And it certainly wasn't because they were old enough, and it wasn't because they were so architecturally distinctive, but because they were old enough, we could put them in as contributing. But we did that, although they really didn't contribute too much to the architectural character of the borough. We did that specifically to allow the Harp to have an extra shot at looking at what the application would be for the buildings that would replace them. And that was exactly something we anticipated happening, that we would want that extra level of review. And as it turns out, that really came to very little, which was a real frustration for me personally. So, yes, we did admittedly vote it to continue. I think we did it on the expectation and the assurance that council would, as Todd said, hold the applicant's feet to the fire to do what they needed to do. I guess for me, the verdict's still out whether that happens.
Any comments from Mary? Here.
I would just note that, there was the discussion that it's a preliminary and final plan all in one step. And there have been a number of meetings about this project, but in terms of process, it was sort of an up or down situation. So in order for the project to move to council, it has to, anyway, we were offering our advice to council, right? So I think that's where people are alluding to. It's that the majority voted in favor with essentially the concerns and conditions, the stipulations for the conditional use forwarded to council. I'm not sure I understand the specific ask we're making here? I mean, other than, I know what my concerns are, like, I agree with what Jim said, like, essentially, the process gives us the council to essentially establish the conditional use requirements.
Those technically have been established, but, there's always back and forth and negotiation that continues.
Yeah, but that's, and also whether all the conditions have been met and so on and so forth. So I think we've expressed that, at least for, my concerns have always been that, it's the majority of the block. So the urban design and architecture and the land use is going to be, it's going to have a huge impact on the surrounding property, right? Because it all sort of hangs together or dies alone. So, the concerns that were listed were some of the key issues that we think are necessary for the success of the sort of contiguous downtown blocks, since this is such a major component of it. But I guess I don't, quite understand what I understand that, so the council president is saying that, the drawings don't reflect a window in the stairwell, which is actually something we did ask for, right? So I think that perhaps because they're rushing the process, they're having trouble keeping up with the documentation, if you will, like to have the documentation perfect and then to the point by the borough engineer satisfying some of the requirements like the stormwater calculations. But that's, I'm not sure that we have a role at this point in. That's for the borough engineer to the stormwater calculations and, for council to deliberate.
I have to say, as one who used to draw by hand.
Me too.
And very well.
And very well, as he said. I am unmoved by the excuse that adjustments could not be made to a Revit model. I'm sorry, they can be made within about 20 seconds, but they weren't. And I have to wonder, why not? Why not? Such a simple thing to do.
We're always speculating. I feel like it's not worth our time to speculate on why somebody else did or did not do something.
I'm just legitimizing that comment.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact is, if we're saying, Todd is saying, sounds to me like he doesn't have confidence in the application to be accurate, and, that's certainly, he can have his opinion.
We all have our opinions.
Todd, if I may add one comment here. So one of the challenges with the timing here was that the conditions were agreed to and read into the record at about midnight during a meeting. And there weren't a lot of people left in the room at that point. And I guess they were published a few days ago. Is that correct?
That's correct. Why was that? During midnight, why couldn't you wait till your next meeting?
Todd, if I may, so the question, I'm trying to get your opinion on something, not argue with you. I don't mean it seemed that way, but the condition came out about the process for validating that they monitor the construction. And I was wondering if you had a chance to read that section of the conditions, and if you have any kind of comfort level with that, or not, because there was obviously opportunity at that like 6-hour meeting to comment on that. But again, it was a long meeting, and a lot of the language wasn't read till close to midnight. So I'd be curious to get your opinion on that section, since you did highlight that in your recent memo.
Well, my understanding of this is there are a couple of provisions related to the integrity of the construction. One is which the construction contractor needs to supply to the zoning officer, like orders, materials, I guess, that the zoning officer has to approve before those materials are ordered. I think I'm characterizing that correctly. I'll point out there, one, I didn't talk to Kevin about this, but I'm not sure that's Kevin's job to sign off on materials orders. Secondly, that would not have prevented the two most recent issues we've seen. One of which is that the wrong materials were delivered and installed on 203 Haverford, the white windows instead of the black windows. That wasn't a matter of what was ordered, it was a matter of what was delivered and installed. So now we have, you're gonna paint them, they say. You can't paint over that material. Secondly, concrete sidewalk was being poured incorrectly, at least the base, from what I understand, of the sidewalk was not prepared correctly before the concrete poured. That was caught by a citizen. Mr. Detail here caught that, called that into the borough building inspector, who then, as far as I'm aware of the story, then ordered the applicant to correct it. So while that provision is in the conditions, that would actually not have prevented the last two things we saw. And I can't honestly believe how the applicant would allow that to happen when he knows his project is under such scrutiny right now. He still lets it happen. Does this not send a signal? Now there's another provision here, which I believe has to do with a bond that will be held. That, you know, all that means is that if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, he loses some money, but he still has done what he's not supposed to do. That doesn't really help us. What's not in here is a provision that we recommended at the time of conditional use, that there be a third party individual who be responsible for monitoring the construction and reporting to the borough. I believe there's weekly construction coordination meetings if anything is amiss. We also, in the letter that we sent to Borough Council more recently, recommended that the applicant be required to hire the architect, to contract with the architect who's designing the building, to also be involved in that correcting construction administration. We don't know if that happened at the last construction. Jim, I'll let you explain the importance of that. Can you explain the importance of it?
Sure. It is a standard feature of the architect-owner contract, the architect's contract with the owner, in this case the developer, that in addition to design and documentation of the building that is to be built, that the architect observe the project under construction, during construction, to ensure that the documents that the architect has prepared are being adhered to by the builder, and to advise the owner in the event that they are not, which is a fairly common occurrence. And the further down the ladder of quality you go, the more common, unfortunately, it becomes, as witness the case of the sidewalk. It's amazing what gets done that is not in conformance with the rules that we all assume are being followed. The sidewalk one, by the way, is a borough standard that was being flagrantly ignored in that instance, just flagrant. So the question is, it is our understanding that in the case of the two buildings currently hopefully finishing construction after 2 eons, that the architect was not engaged during construction. One of the virtues of having the architect engaged during construction is that the architect protects the owner's interest as well as their own interest, to make sure that all the care that went into preparing construction documents was not in vain. So when I learned that, I was really quite surprised. It's not a tremendously significant portion of the architect's fee to provide those services in comparison to the benefit that is enjoyed by everyone, including the public. Let's not forget the public, who might not want to walk under a cantilevered corner that's obviously failing, which was the case with one of these buildings here until it was band-aided recently. if the architect had been on the case on that building, we would have been looking at, so this amounts to a structural failure for all these months. So it is our opinion on the planning commission that the full range of architectural services should be expected from the architect and paid for by the owner.
Is that something that the council can require at this point, or is that off the table?
That's our recommendation.
Right, but is that something that council is able to require at this point?
I would think so.
May or may not be, but we recommend that it be an issue that's taken up with this developer.
And a lot of these concerns, they're not in our code, so we can't require them. I mean, we cannot demand that the developer comply with this in order to put the project forward. We can't say that, well, we're not going to approve this project because you're not doing this, which is not part of the code. We have to have, you know, a reason based in our zoning and our code to do.
I'm hoping, Trish, that we will
But
take
we can't
steps.
bring it up. I mean, any of these concerns
Let's take steps to
potentially could be
avoid
brought up. However,
shoddy construction, I think is the message here. Shoddy construction, that's what we've witnessed.
so the developer has assured us that he will use a different contractor for this project.
He even brought him to one meeting and showed us his contract. I have no idea whether this is a guarantee of quality or not. But there are a couple of things that will move us far along the road to quality construction, and we've named two of them. So it's up to you guys to apply pressure. Of course you can't require it. It's not in the code. The code doesn't deal with the quality of construction. It deals with code compliance, which is a far cry from construction quality. What we're looking for is construction quality. Some of the buildings we don't even think twice about tearing down have more construction quality than the ones that are currently being built around here. And in the glaring case of that corner where it was all cracked, I mean, that's just outrageous. It's outrageous. We're so damn lucky the thing didn't fall down and kill somebody. And it sat that way for months and months. So my recommendation, my fervent hope, is that the borough takes steps to preclude that from happening again. Excuse me.
To answer your question, we don't think the provisions of the conditions are adequate. I can't offer suggestions on how to use your soft power as a council president or as a council, but I imagine you do have more power than you're alluding to in the way that expectations are laid. Far be it for me to tell you how to do your job. But if I got that letter that we sent to you, I would have gone to the applicant and say, don't come back here until you solve these problems. That is an exercise of power that you chose not to do. And you had power to do it because many of the things we raised in the letter had to do with compliance with the SALA. As the borough engineer said, there are many items that have not yet been completed. You have the power to tell the applicant to take a hike. You had the power at your last meeting to vote no. You have that power. You chose not to use it.
At the last meeting, we spent much of our time addressing the engineers' concerns, the shade tree concerns, the harbor concerns, all of the factors that you raised in your vote. We said, well, our vote is contingent on the engineer's review, our vote is contingent on the shade tree, our vote is contingent on the harbor. We've discussed many of those things at our meeting last month. We're going to discuss some of them next week. We have the harb's concerns and the fire chief's concerns, not the harb's, the shade tree's concerns and the fire chief's concerns on our agenda for Thursday. So we continue to move through all of these items that you have flagged in your vote.
That's good to hear, because I was under the understanding you decided to accept the Montgomery County Planning Commission's recommendations about shade trees and not the Shade Tree Commission. So
we're going to continue to discuss that on Thursday.
See, no one knows that.
It's on the agenda, Tom. I mean,
that detail on the agenda, then I started.
And we're going to discuss the Shade Tree Commission's concerns
I'm a little worried also that, I mean, I feel like this discussion should be focused on practical steps and also acknowledging the sort of situation that we find ourselves in, but it's not, it's just the way the world has turned out, right? It's not something that we can control. So the property owner has control over most of the block, right? And has removed, like most of the stores are now vacant. And I also think that I'm not convinced that it's like necessarily easy to find developers to build 3-story mixed use buildings of high quality, because there aren't that many of them that you can point to as case studies. So the developers typically build bigger projects than that or smaller housing units. But I think this land use type is the way it's also being done with this sort of modern style of planning is difficult to pull off financially, but I think, and I, you know, as a resident of Elmwood Avenue, right, where the church has been torn down and left as a pile of rubble now for how many years, right? I don't think we can just assume that, like, we can have the luxury of talking about stuff forever, right? But we need to execute. And so I have concerns about the project. I share all of the concerns raised about, for example, also the 2 existing buildings. And but I don't see, like, we only have so many chess moves we can make here, right?
We made all our chess moves. But the council has a chess move yet to make.
Yeah, so I think
we are exhorting them to make the right move.
Yeah.
Not the wrong move. Because if they make the wrong move, we'll be living with it for the rest of our lives and way beyond. That's my concern.
I just think we should be clear, because I feel like it's a lot of sort of recriminations flying around, as opposed to just, you know, what is the ask? And, you know, is the ask to basically, you know, I think it sounds like to me is to be meticulous with meeting the requirements and be clear with the applicant. What is expected.
We have a resolution that we were prepared to discuss, but we're not allowed to discuss it. That would have been the ask.
But we can have this discussion, so let's be focused on what we are discussing.
Now let's bring it to a conclusion, right?
Well, read the ask. We think it's critical at this point. The Planning Commission remains generally supportive of this project as a benefit to the borough. Based on the above, and I won't read you the above, Planning Commission withdraws its prior recommendation. There was not consensus on that. Planning Commission further recommends to the Borough Council that, and this is what's important, approval of the application should be withheld until the application is complete and consistent with the settlement in regard to all substantial matters, including stormwater management, landscaping, lighting, bicycle parking, and that these aspects of the application shall not merely be approved on a will comply basis. Which is, I think, the impression we got at the last council meeting. That council was prepared to approve a lot of these things on a will comply basis.
Which does feel a little bit like we're just going to trust you, when I think the point is being made that there isn't necessarily a track record.
And to Adam's point, it is not us who is slowing this down. It is the applicant. We all said that. And we're not slowing this down. That is why we voted to put this in the hands of council, to respect the fact that it has to move along, right? The reason that these things are lingering is because of the applicant. Stormwater calculations are not different from Revit. If it works, and you can do the calculations quickly. The reason the stormwater calculations are finished, I suspect, is because it doesn't work.
Well, okay.
We have a borough employee, or borough, you know, Eric Johnson, it's his job.
You will too. But
you're bringing up the technical topics where so to the point, like, yes, it's a matter for the borough engineer, but I would ask, what happens if it doesn't work? What are you asking?
I'll just say the borough, you know, we're not going to approve this project if the stormwater doesn't work.
Right, okay, not on a well compliant.
It's on them to figure out another solution.
Right. The important part of this, we get the impression from the last council meeting that there would be openness to approving these things on a will comply basis, which would be inappropriate.
What's that mean?
Will comply means that the applicant
You think we're gonna just take it on faith if he can't provide what the.
I got the sense of the council.
Wait, Todd, let me finish. Are you taking public comment? Because it says public comment for each agenda item. So.
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you know I'm Mike Salenson? I'm a member of the Borough Council. This meeting started with your retiring member and Heidi talking about how, despite their disagreements and their vociferous disagreements at times, that they have respect for each other. And I would hope that you would feel the same with us, that we have mutual respect for each other. I did not appreciate, and Fred and I disagree on many aspects of this project. Regardless of that, I think, Todd, you engaged in several ad hominem attacks on Fred that were inappropriate. You're making all sorts of assumptions about what our state of mind is that are wrong, at least as far as I know, and based on conversations I've had with other members of council. For example, if you think that it doesn't bother the crap out of me that those plans are incorrect and that our condition, one of our conditions is that you comply with the plans as drawn, if I don't have a reasonable assurance that those plans are accurate as they are going to be presented to us for the vote, I don't know what to tell you, because it shows a level of lack of trust and respect for me as a council member and several of my other council members. And you're reading into our state of mind things that are just radical assumptions and falsities. We did not take a vote at our last meeting. We were information gathering at our last meeting, nothing more. We weren't empowered to take a vote. Our vote doesn't take place until 2 weeks from now. And you know, because I sat in your living room for 2 hours the other night, that I and several other members of your council followed up with that meeting because of your concerns and listened to them and are taking them incredibly seriously, as we did when you gave us the recommendations, which I forget how many there are, 18 conditions that we put on there. They're not perfect. They can't be perfect. They won't be perfect. But they were subject to hours and hours of negotiation. And then I hear that, we should have adjourned the meeting instead of staying till midnight because we had one action item that we had to deliberate in an executive session for over an hour and came back at midnight to conclude with. We could have all been home in bed in our jammies, but we did our job and we took everything that you guys gave to us and did the best we could to get those conditions written. Not all of them. We're not going to take everything you tell us. The idea of having the architect on site or giving the approval, until you and Jim had a conversation with me, there was no way to know the importance of that. We're not engineers. We're relying on you, and then to hear that your state of mind on the vote was actually just because you wanted to kick the can down the road to us and that you didn't really believe in what you were voting on. How am I supposed to know that? That's not the impression I got. The impression I got was you guys were fairly satisfied that if these conditions were met, that it would go forward. All I can say is I'm astounded by the level of assumptions that you in particular are making as to what our state of mind is and where we're going with this when, I haven't even had the full opportunity to read all of the conditions as written, in enough detail, even though I signed off on it, to know whether, as a lawyer, I'm going to go back and be very careful to say, I need to know these things. I need to know that the plans are accurate. All of those things, like the idea that we don't care about that and we're not paying attention to that. I can speak for myself and I can also speak for other council members who I've talked to because we've been having conversations about everything that you presented to us. I've been at every single one of your meetings since I've been on council, either in person or online. Of course I'm listening to everything you're telling us. And at the end of the day, that points out, we do have constraints on what we can hard say no on and soft say no on. We can use our powers of persuasion and we can use our actual powers given to us as a matter of law, and those are not the same. But, we will be using those powers in our best judgment, just as, we rely on you to use your recommendations based on your best judgment and the judgment of, the professionals that we have to rely on. Nobody said you can't comment to have a discussion, inform us more. What we said was, and what I read those emails was, you can't re-vote because the process under the Borough Code doesn't allow you to do that. That doesn't mean you can't have a discussion and continue to inform us. I would love all of you to continue to inform me by email, by phone call, by whatever it is. I'm not an architect. I don't think anybody else on council is an architect, a design engineer, or any of those things. We can only rely on people at this table, borough engineer, the other people who, are going to provide their expertise to us. We have the same concerns you do. I just raised a concern about the construction the other day, to the borough professionals, that I have a separate concern on one of the buildings that's going on. So, the idea that we don't care is kind of, in all honesty, kind of deeply offensive to me as someone who's working really hard and really understands that this is a transformational, intergenerational project. And, we got to get it as right as best as we can. And that's all I got to say.
That's very good to hear. Thank you.
Well, I should read these final things, but I'll also apologize for the tardiness of my comments. I will say, I'm going by the tone of the comments I heard at the last council meeting, which was the council's real public statement about this, which was really, the sense of that meeting was, let's rush to solve these things and get this. And I did not hear at that last council meeting, council members speaking up the way you just did. And that would have been refreshing to hear. I did also not hear that in the email that I received either. I took them quite differently. Your job is done. That's the message I got from those emails. So I apologize to you, Mike, because I know how much care and I appreciate your coming out. But I will say from the correspondence I received from the Borough Council President and the kind of general tenor of the last Borough Council meeting, I got a different impression. So I too, like Jen, am glad to hear you say what you're saying. It would have been refreshing to have our council members voice more concerns at that meeting, I think. The other things I'll say, because people have asked that we would be the things that we would discuss. Our approval of the application should be withheld for one meeting after the applicant presents to council a fully completed final plan, which should be made available to the public for review, and images of which should be posted on Haverford Avenue for public observation, so the public may fully review and comment in advance of council's vote. It's essentially a 14-day public airing of this once the applicant has completed the application. Approval of the application should be withheld until the applicant provides true and accurate drawings of all facades visible from the public way with an inventory of materials as required by the SALDO and the conditions of approval. I think that's pretty straightforward. Approval of the waiver requested for the SALDO provisions related to the design of the Haverford Avenue facade of the building should not be granted until the applicant meets with the Planning Commission and/or the HARB to address further refinements to the street level design of the Haverford Avenue facade. Those things aren't linked. It's within your ability to ask that. Finally, approval of the application shall be contingent on the borough and the applicant agreeing on a mutually acceptable approach towards construction observation, including but not limited to the applicant agreeing to contract with the project architect for construction administration services and the applicant and the borough arranging for independent third-party monitoring of construction. That was what we were planning to discuss tonight. Those being the potentially the most important things to continue discussing. I'll ask at this point if there's any other planning commissioners have any other comments about this. Is there anyone, I can't see the screen. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make any comments about this? All right then, so then if there's no further comment, is there any public comment on any other matters before the planning commission? Okay, then I'll have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
I think we talked about it.